What's going on, Flix Talkers? Welcome back to Flix Talk Podcast. Now I'm starting a whole new segment on my channel completely dedicated to the rare gems of like the 70s, 80s, 90s horror films, and it's kind of something that I always wanted to incorporate during Flix Talk, that kind of the creation of Flix Talk. And because it is a huge part of my life, retro movies is something that I just deeply, it's kind of like a guilty pleasure of mine, because I know those movies aren't necessarily good as far as overall being written, you know, some of the practical effects and stuff and whatnot compared to today's standards, but it's something that always held very close to my heart nostalgia wise, and I thought I'd like to share a couple of gems that I've discovered over the last couple of years, or I've even seen recently, kind of like remastered and restored on Blu-ray or 4K, that I have not seen growing up, especially those overseas or those kind of just directly to VHS that didn't get a wide release. Those are the gems that I'm going to focus on, horror related once again, and I call this segment Tales from the Flix. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to the first episode, and in this episode we're going to talk about a 1990s film that you wouldn't even think was a 90s film because it looks like it's from the 70s, and it's called Night Killer. Now this film did come out in Italy August 3rd, 1990. It is rated R, and it's directed by Claudio Fragasso, who did more notably Troll 2, the horror movie that's kind of voted the best worst film of all time. Now, I'll be honest, guys, I don't know too much about Italian horror movies. I believe it's called Giallo or Gallo. I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. Let me know in the comments below, guys. But I am getting a little more familiar because I do like their use of practical effects. And of course, the music on these Italian films are always above and beyond, guys. And that's one thing that I really do love about watching these old films. Now, before I jump into this review, I'm going to let you guys know that it is a non-spoiler review because some of you guys, even though these are older flicks, you guys do want to check them out, and I'll put a link to where they are available because some of these films are only available on physical or streaming. Some of you may not be able to check it out, but if it is possible, I'm always going to leave links to that in the description, alright? So don't worry too much. So in a nutshell, what I got from Night Killer is that a slasher, a stalker, someone with a mask that very much resembles Freddy Krueger, because I mean that was a huge slasher nightmare demon, you know, entity that was very popular in the 80s. It's kind of being ripped off a little bit as far as the way the mask looks, and he does have these kind of like claws where it's like long fingernails that are obviously rubbery, yet he's able to somehow kill these girls with it, slash their throat, and even more notably punch through their whole body with his fist. I don't know how this is possible because he's just a regular guy with a mask on. No extraordinary superpowers, but somehow he can punch through them like they're a piece of tinfoil. Now we get our huge serial killer aspect where it is a slasher. They do talk about him on the news a lot, kind of just urging people to watch out. They don't know what he looks like because of the mask, like I said, and everybody's kind of on high alert. So one day Melanie's just hanging out at her house, and of course she gets the Scream phone call with the creepy guy at the end just saying a bunch of perverted horniness things over the phone, and she starts getting creeped out. She starts locking all of her doors, and then of course who shows up? It is the killer, but instead of killing her, he rapes her, and he does so in such a sadistic manner that he leaves her really traumatized to a point where she wants to kill herself. So she does take a couple of suicide attempts. So in one of these attempted suicides, some guy who's real creep about everything kind of finds out where she's at on the beach, stops her, you know, kidnaps her ultimately, and then just makes her his sex slave, like a weird, twisted, just mind manipulates her. So he doesn't want her to commit suicide. He wants to kind of do it himself. So
I'm gonna kill you all right, but when I say so.
We ultimately get this feel of, okay, this is the killer, this is the stalker, this is the guy that's been watching Melanie this whole time, and he's just kind of out to just wreak havoc on her once again. So she starts kind of getting hip to this whole thing about how she's going to escape, how she's going to break out. It's not your typical slasher film, guys. And on a side trivia note, the director himself wanted this to be more of a psychological thriller, but the studio saw this final cut and said, no, you got to throw more gore in it. Hence, we get all these punches through the stomach. And honestly, guys, it is the exact same punch, just different clothing every single time. So every death that you see is just the exact same fatality move. Now, like I said before, the one thing holding this film together like glue is the suspenseful music. So if you guys are really hell-bent on those tension type films, the music on this is great. I mean, I had no gripes with it. I thought everything looked visually pretty well put together. This was filmed, I believe, in Vermont or Virginia, somewhere in the States, and it was also filmed in Italy and in some of the European countries like Rome and whatnot. So there's a couple locations on this, guys. You can tell that it's obviously all done in ADR as far as the voice dubbing goes, and just like every 70s, 80s, and 90s horror film, you get a lot of bad written dialogue.
I'm the only one who's seen his face. I'm the only one who can possibly identify him. Now, I did just like you said. I haven't told the police anything.
Okay. We'll tell the police. But leave the gun at home, Sherman.
No, someone's got to stop that crazy bastard.
And they definitely hold no punches with this character, Axel. Oh my god, his acting is atrocious and hilarious at the same time.
Fried chicken and french fries.
That being said, guys, I know I said this was going to be a horror-based segment. This film didn't really feel too much of a horror slasher type film. That is a huge part of it, but a huge chunk of it is also psychological and dealing a lot with Stockholm Syndrome. So if you guys are into films like that, of course there's a lot of drawn out dialogue that could have been clipped back a little bit. This movie's only an hour and a half, by the way, but it still could have been trimmed about 10 minutes. Then I think you guys might want to check out Night Killer. And before I end this review, the ending on this was pretty bizarre. Just the whole concept of why everything is happening was bizarre. So it's not your typical horror type film, guys. I'll just let you know off the bat. It wasn't one of my favorites at all, but it was one that I had not seen, and it got a Blu-ray transfer about a month ago, so I wanted to check it out. And you guys can check it out on Amazon yourself. It is on Blu-ray. I don't believe it's on any streaming, but let me know in the comments below, guys. All right, so that being said, my final score on Night Killer 1990 would be about a 2.8 out of 5, guys, saying it wasn't really my cup of tea. It was a bit boring, if I'm being completely honest. The gore was pretty cool as far as the practical effects go. Some of the people getting cut, slashed left and right were pretty cool. And I thought it was actually really funny. It just popped in my head. Right at the beginning of the film, a girl gets slashed across her neck, and then seconds later, it shows her gripping her neck, and then she moves her hand away, and there's only kind of just a little bit of red blood. There's no slash mark. So I think they kind of screwed up a bit on the editing process. And if you guys kind of watch this movie and really pay attention, the sound audio is very, very bad. Some of the transfer was a little bit shaky and choppy, and there's lines going through the film when they were transferring it to Blu-ray to digital. But you know, that kind of adds to the whole nostalgic factor, and I kind of like that. So yeah, have you guys seen Night Killer? Did you guys like my review? If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And like I said, if you guys want to check it out on physical, I'll leave that in the description below. Now, before you leave, make sure you guys are subscribing and hitting that bell notification to get more content like this, as well as current movie reviews and movie news. All right, thank you guys so much for checking out the review. Till next time, I'm gone. Peace.